right, so we're back on the record. You remain under oath, and thank you, Mr. Bell.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. Dr. Philo, do you have additional duties then? You were testifying as far as the training program, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And what is that called again?
Forensic Pathology Fellowship. I am the director of that program.
And do you know a Dr. Andrea Williams?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And how so?
She was one of the fellows that I trained for a year at our office.
Okay. And did she perform autopsies?
Yes, she did.
Under your care?
Most of them, yes.
Okay. And while she was performing autopsies, would you be present?
Yeah, on all of them, yes.
Okay. And would you also review her reports?
Yes.
Okay. And during the course of this case, were you present while Timothy Russell was being autopsied?
Yes, I was.
And did you perform the autopsy of Malissa Williams?
Yes, I did.
What is an autopsy, please?
An autopsy is the the most extensive medical test, and it is essentially the evaluation and examination of a dead person, and it includes both an external examination as well as an internal examination, looking at the skin and all the structures on the inside. And we also use ancillary tests as well, and ultimately the goal is to determine the cause of death.
Now, does the revised code for the state of Ohio or the administrative rules explain when an autopsy should be performed on a body?
Yes.
And when is that, sir?
Well, part of that revised code has to do with what cases are referred to the medical legal death investigation system. And all those are violent deaths, be it homicide, accidents, and suicides. And then there's various subcategories of when autopsies need to be performed. On violent deaths that include potential homicides are certainly in that requirement.
Okay. So shooting deaths?
It would be part of that, yes.
And deaths by police?
Yes.
Okay. And did the current case require an autopsy then?
Yes.
Not all cases, though, all deaths require an autopsy.
Correct.
Okay. Again, you testified as to the number of autopsies that you performed. You've testified here in the courthouse. How many times have you testified in the Cuyahoga County Courthouse?
I have testified 140 different times. Certainly 80% or more are in Cuyahoga County. The other would be in the other 10, 11 counties in Ohio that I've testified in.
Is the purpose of an autopsy to discover and pronounce a verdict of the cause of the death, sir?
Yes.
And the manner of the death?
Yes.
And have you testified as to the findings, the verdict, as to the cause and manner of death before, sir?
Yes, I have.
Regarding the scene here, sir, how did you first get notified that there was an autopsy that you would be in charge of?
Well, I was first notified that I was asked or invited to attend the death scene. It was Friday morning in November, and I was on call, so it was my responsibility to respond to those types of scenes. And that was maybe 7:15, 7:20 in the morning. When I got in, all I knew at the time was that it was a police-involved shooting. And so generally the medical examiner would go to those scenes. He was out of town or not available, so it was my responsibility. When I got to the medical examiner's office, I met with Dr. Weens and one of our investigators, and the three of us went to the scene. And at that time, I was just aware that there was a police-involved shooting and 2 bodies are in a car. And we got to the scene around 8:15 in the morning.
Okay. Are you talking about Friday morning, November 30th, 2012?
Yes.
Can you please describe for us what was viewed at that time, sir?
Well, at the scene, we were met with a Detective Scott Gardner from the East Cleveland Police Department. He had informed the three of us that the scene was located in a street that leads into and out of a parking lot. At that time, he had stated that there were perhaps up to 140, give or take, cartridges and alleged bullets that were spent, and the bodies were still in the vehicle. We were escorted up to the scene, and we looked at the two bodies in the vehicle. And I asked just to make sure that there wasn't any other bodies in the back seat or in the trunk. So I asked them to certainly look inside those areas. And then while at the scene, Dr. Weens and I both made sure that these two individuals were indeed dead.
Okay. So was there a photographer there from the medical examiner's office that took pictures?
Yes.
May I approach the witness?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Showing you State's Exhibits 1019 through 1032. Have you seen these photographs before, sir? And can you identify them for the court?
I have seen these photographs before, and State's Exhibit 1019 up until and including 1032 are photographs that were taken by our medical legal death investigator at the scene.
Do they accurately reflect the scene as you saw it that morning, November 30th, 2012?
Yes.
Okay. And do you see yourself and Dr. Weens in some of these photographs?
I didn't look specifically to see if I was in any of those photographs, but yes, I'm visible in State's Exhibit 1021.
Okay. And Dr. Weens?
She's also in some of the photographs too.
Okay. Sure, showing you State's Exhibit number 1024 in this group that you just identified. You've been telling us that you checked to see whether or not the occupants of the vehicle were deceased. Is that correct?
Yes.
And how would you have done that?
By sticking my hand on their neck to feel for a pulse. And there was none.
Showing you State's Exhibit 1024, specifically, does that accurately reflect the way that the bodies were at the time that you and Dr. Weens were there at 8:15 in the morning?
Yes.
November 30th? So prior to testifying, have you also reviewed some of the police photographs taken of the scene that morning?
Yes.
Approaching again, Your Honor.
Sure.
Showing you State's Exhibit number 983, sir. Do you recognize that as the Cleveland Police Department photograph?
Yes, I do.
Of the scene, correct?
Yes.
We're seeing that up on the Mondo pad as well?
Correct.
Does this accurately reflect the way that you saw it in State's Exhibit 1024 when you were there at 8:15 in the morning?
Yes.
Okay. Showing you State's Exhibit number 1197, attachment O-1230, and 1199 then, attachment E, 03.14.57. Do these pictures also accurately depict what you saw at the scene when the photograph was taken in State's Exhibit 1024?
Yes, they both do.
Changes to the body that you can see or no, sir?
Correct.
Any changes?
Oh, any changes? No, they seem to be in the same position in each of these photographs as when I was at the scene.
As exhibited in 1024, correct?
Correct.
This is that picture 1024.
Yes.
Were there agents from BCI present at that scene, sir?
Yes.
So at the scene, after you checked to see whether or not the occupants, now known as Timothy Russell and Malissa Williams, were deceased, what else did you do after that point?
We just did a brief examination of the body, both bodies, to detect the changes that go through the early stages of death, be it the rigor mortis, the muscle stiffening, and the temperature cooling of the body. And that's essentially what we looked at. There was concerns that there may perhaps be guns in the vehicle. So we leaned in closer to make sure there weren't any, because we do not want to transport firearms into our office for fear of someone else getting hurt.
Were you concerned, or had that concern been relayed to you by somebody else?
We were asked if we could see any guns, so part of the examination of the bodies were to pat them down to see, or to feel if we could feel any guns, and we didn't feel any.
And that would have been done after the picture that was taken in State's Exhibit 1024?
Yes.
And so you didn't locate or find any guns on their persons?
No.
Or in the car at that time, is that correct, sir?
Correct.
What else did you do after that, sir?
Essentially, we documented the findings around the perimeter of the vehicle, and then okayed the towing service to come and pick up the vehicle when the investigators on scene were okay with releasing the vehicle with the bodies intact. I was not present. I had other responsibilities to attend to, so I was not there when the vehicle was loaded up onto the flatbed truck and brought to our office.
Okay. Is that the first time that that's been done, or is that a normal practice, or does that occur with what regularity? Please explain.
The delivering of the bodies in vehicles?
Correct.
We do it on a fair number of times when it's a complex scene. It kind of maintains the integrity of the scene with the bodies in. Generally, we would take the bodies out of the vehicles at the scene, but because of the nature of this, and we wanted to have the vehicle in our vehicle inspection bay, it was the whole vehicle with the bodies inside were delivered. So it happens commonly.
Okay. Now, sure, showing you what's been marked over here on the corner of this display, State's Exhibit 1091. Can you see from your vantage point that there's a state sticker on this?
I do see the sticker.
Okay. And given that it's 1091, can you please explain whether or not what's depicted here is what you saw at the Heritage Middle School on November 30th? That is just the terrain. If this accurately reflects your recollection of the way that the scene looked on that day. Not talking about the placement of cars, just the terrain itself.
The terrain is very similar to what I recall.
Now, when you came in, do you recall where your car parked?
Yes.
And where would that have been?
It would be, if this model were extended closer to me, then there was a street that led down a hill. Our vehicle was down at the base of the hill, and as a lot of other vehicles were, and so I had to walk slightly up the grade to the where the model takes over from here.
So that was was that the roadway called Lee Road, or was that down the streets of a drive?
If this model were extended, I don't know exactly what street, but it was a street that would roughly be down, perhaps where my hand is, and further over towards the big screens.
Okay. Just so the court reporters have an accurate record of what you're talking about. We're talking about to the left of the model, on the left-hand side, and out about 2 feet from where you're standing. Would you say that that's about 4 feet, sir?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I'm showing you State's Exhibit 1021, or 1020, I'm sorry, 1020. Is this the driveway that you're discussing?
Yes, 1020 is the driveway looking downward, and our vehicle, maybe the white vehicle, or the one that's gray right in front of it.
Okay. When you arrived at the scene at 8:15 on November 30th, 2012, Were there cars as depicted on the model?
There were at least three. The two that are closest to me, the two police vehicles, as well as the blue Malibu, those were present. I don't recall if there was anything further towards your direction.
Okay. This is what you were concerned with then?
Yes.
Okay. Did you see any other police cars in this area up to those that is on the left of the model?
Yes.
Okay. So there were some other police cars?
Yes.
Okay. And at the time, you were concentrating on the Malibu?
Yes.
Is the car that we have here on the model depicted in those pictures that you were looking at, showing us here?
Yes, there were.
Okay. Were you present at the medical examiner's office, sir, when the bodies were taken out of the Malibu?
Yes.
And what would that have been, sir?
That was in the afternoon of the 30th of November.
Okay, so during your normal work scheduled day?
Yes.
When you perform an autopsy, does a number get assigned from the Cuyahoga County Medical Examiner's office?
Yes.
And what was the number on this case, sir?
Melissa Williams' unique Cuyahoga County Medical Examiner's Office number is IN 2012-2024.
Dr. Philo, showing you State's Exhibit number 1051. Do you recognize that? Can you identify it for the court?
I do recognize State's Exhibit 1051 as being a copy of the report of autopsy and autopsy protocol, as well as the medical examiner's verdict regarding the death of Malissa Williams.
Okay. And that number again is IN-12-2024?
Yes.
What does that number signify, the 2024?
The 2024 would be that Malissa Williams was the 2024th deceased that we accepted at our office. And it's a unique, ongoing, continuous number that would be assigned to subsequent cases following that. Each body that comes into our office gets a unique number for identification purposes.
Okay. Does that number follow them with any exhibits that are collected from their bodies or from trace evidence in your department?
Yes.
In your office, I should say.
Yes, in our office.
And the IN stands for, is that identification number?
No, it stands for in county, because we also do autopsies for other counties that do not have pathologists to perform them. They would have an OU for out of county. So IN is in, it's a Cuyahoga County death.
Understood. And then 1-2 is the year then, is that correct?
Yes.
So up here on the mondo pad we have State's Exhibit 1051, as you do in your hands. Do you see this?
I do.
The front page of this accurately reflects what you have there, 1051.
Yes, it does.
We will be using this, and if you see anything different, please let us know at any time. You were there, then, you said, at the medical examiner's office when the bodies were delivered. Is that right?
I was not when the vehicle was delivered, but when the bodies were taken out, I was present. I was on another death scene when the vehicle got to our office.
Okay, understood. But you were there when the bodies were taken out. Showing you States 1033, that's 1033 through 1040. Could you identify those for the court?
I can identify State's Exhibit 1033 up until and including 1040 as being photographs of the vehicle in the vehicle inspection bay at the Cuyahoga County Medical Examiner's office.
All right. Is that where the bodies would have been taken out?
Yes.
So some of those photographs then, were they taken in your presence or were they taken prior to?
Most of them were taken prior to, with the exceptions of 1035 and 1036. Those would have been while I was present.
Okay. And those have the bodies inside of the cars?
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
1035 on the screen is what you're looking at?
Correct.
And also 1036, is that correct?
Yes.
All right. So you would have seen those pictures, is that correct?
I was present when those pictures were taken.
Do those pictures and the rest of these pictures accurately reflect what you saw when you were present there at the coroner's bay or the medical examiner's bay?
Yes, they do.
Okay. And are these pictures kept in the ordinary course of business of the Cuyahoga County Medical Examiner's office?
Yes, they are.
What's a dirty picture, sir?
A dirty picture is a term that we use at our medical examiner's office as a picture that has been taken as initially seen the body, as opposed to a clean photograph where the body has been cleaned, wiped free of blood. So a dirty photograph would be as is.
Show you State's Exhibits 825, 826, 827, and 828. Could you identify these, please, sir?
The State's Exhibits 825 up until and including 828 are 4 photographs of Malissa Williams as she is on the autopsy cart. These are photographs of her with her clothing still in place.
All right, so before her body was cleaned up for examination, is that correct?
Correct.
And show me State's Exhibit 825 on the board. It shows what you were talking about, clothing on, is that correct?
Yes.
826, sir?
It is a similar photograph, but it is of her face.
And 827, sir?
It is an overall view of her body on the autopsy cart.
Okay. The body has been taken out of the coffin, is that correct?
All of these 4 photographs, 825, 826, the current one, 827, and 828. Now the body's out of the vehicle, put on a white sheet and on the autopsy cart, and has been photographically documented.
Okay, and 828 then, sir? Same thing.
Same, yes.
Looking at State's Exhibit 828, sir, by the ruler number where the number 4 is, right up above it, do you identify that for us, please?
Above the number 4 on the ruler is a copper-colored fragment of metal. It's near the collar or a zipper on a sweatshirt.
When these bodies are first processed before you see them, what happens with the clothing and any evidence, sir, at that time?
The trace evidence scientist assigned to the case will look at the body and will collect any evidence that they see on the outside of the clothing. They will also take the clothing off, oftentimes in my presence, but not always.
Okay. And does the department then have records and reports as to what was collected and how it was placed into evidence there at the medical examiner's office?
Yes.
Who's in charge of the trace evidence unit?
Mr. Curtis Jones is the supervisor for trace evidence.
How else are the bodies prepared, or what other things were done prior to you doing an autopsy?
After the body is the clothing is taken off of the body, then the body is weighed on a large scale, as well as a measurement for how long the individual is, and there's just brief documentation for eye color, hair color, facial features, teeth, condition, those sorts of things. In this case, we decided to do x-rays of the bodies to see if there's any projectiles that are still present within the body. And so the x-rays were performed prior to me actually performing the autopsy.
Showing you State's Exhibit 829 through 844, sir. Have you reviewed the x-ray photographs before, sir?
Yes, many times.
Okay. Will this help us in your testimony to identify the placement of particular bullets and wound pads?
Well, it will help for someone who might not understand the anatomy, but keeping in mind that the position of the x-rays, sometimes the body is rotated, so although I'm saying something specifically in the autopsy report, it may not be as accurate on the x-ray because of the rotation of the body. So it may help, excuse me, to show where bullets were found, but my autopsy description is by far more accurate.
Okay. Then what is an anatomic position, sir?
Well, the anatomic position is how the body is placed when examined. Generally, for an autopsy, the body is on the back and the arms and legs are at the side. The normal anatomic position would be when someone is very relaxed, and so their hands are going to be at their side, feet would be sort of rotated towards the outside, again on the back. We try to recapitulate or move the body so that they're in the normal anatomic position, but because of the rigor mortis, the stiffening, that's not always able to do that.
The pictures that you've looked at, the exhibits, sir, of the x-rays, are these kept in the ordinary course of business in the medical examiner's office?
Yes, they are.
And again, you've reviewed them, is that correct?
Yes.
Do you review them during the autopsy or soon after the autopsy? How does that happen?
What I do is I look at them first. First I do is look at the body, making sure that the parts of the where I see holes in the body are x-rayed. Once I've done that, then I review the x-rays to see what's present. I'm looking to see if there's the number of bullets, if any of them are sharp, so I don't cut myself, or the autopsy assistant cuts themselves as well. During the autopsy procedure, we have the ability to have these x-rays right at the autopsy table side. So I'm referring to them during the autopsy procedure, making sure that I'm finding the more difficult ones to find and where they may be located. So the x-rays are a tool to help me identify what's present and where.
Okay. And you've used these same x-rays that we're seeing in photographic form here to do that, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. What is the starting point of an autopsy? After you have it all prepared, the x-rays are done, it's on the gurney, you're about to perform the autopsy. After you've checked the body for sharp objects, what is it that you do first, sir?
My standard procedure is to be methodical in going from the head down to the neck, down to the torso, down the right arm, down the left arm, down the right leg, down the left leg, and then I'll look at the back. While I'm doing that, I am looking for signs of natural diseases, signs of scars, signs of tattoos, signs of injuries. Depending on the nature of the case, I may have dirty photographs, meaning photographs showing how the body is prior to me cleaning and examining the wounds closer. So all of this is the beginning stages of the autopsy procedure for me.
And what is known as from the general to the specific?
Well, as I stated, I look at the general area of the body, so I start on the head, and then I examine specifically what is present on the head. So I would be looking for, where the wounds are, and then take those measurements. So the general would be there are wounds on the head. The specific would be where they are, the description, the measurements, the locations of those wounds. So I'm documenting that with my notes as well as with photographs.
Okay. Who's taking photographs?
We have forensic photographers who take the photographs at my discretion.
Okay. During the course of the autopsy?
Yes.
Did they watch you from beginning to end of the autopsy? Do they have to stay there, or do you call them in? How do you communicate with them?
They are present. It's on the same floors where we do the autopsy, their office. So they're present when I'm examining the body, and then they're taking the photographs at my discretion. I will, I will let them know when I'm done for a while, so they can go back to their office and workstations and not stand around and waste time. So when I do need them, we'll call them back into the autopsy suite. It's a 1-minute walk over.
Okay. And when you performed the body of Malissa and Williams autopsy, when you did that autopsy, what time of the day was it?
I started the autopsy at 8:20 in the morning of the 1st of December, 2012.
And when Dr. Weens performed the autopsy on Timothy Russell under your direction, what time did that occur, sir?
She started the autopsy of Mr. Russell on the same day at 10:15 a.m.
Okay, so were you present then during the course of the autopsy of Timothy Russell?
Absolutely.
Were you performing the autopsy of Malissa Williams during part of that period of time?
Most of that time, yes.
And were your gurneys near each other?
Right next to him.
And
Yes.
were you talking and conversing with each other during that course of time?
Yes.
And were you telling her what you were finding?
Yes.
Was she telling you what she was finding?
Yes.
Is that part of your duties as overseeing what it is that she does?
Yes.
Showing you pictures, States Exhibits 845 through 865. 845 through 865. What are these photographs of, sir? Please hold them.
The State's Exhibits 845, and they're not in exact order, but the packet you handed me are mostly autopsy photographs.
Yes.
There's also some photographs of the mannequin trajectories that I used, and I believe there's at least one scene photograph in there.
Okay. Okay. The pictures of the bodies that are here exhibited in the State's Exhibits between those numbers, 845 through 865, sir. These are all pictures of the body of who?
Malissa Williams.
We talked about the body being on the gurney, and the first thing you do is to look for sharp objects in it. Showing you State's Exhibit 845, is this prior to cutting the body, sir?
Yes.
And this would be a clean picture then? It's no longer a dirty photograph, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and the number for in county 12224 is there, is that correct?
Yes, it's on the table near her left arm.
Okay, and the yellow tags, why do we have those?
Those are the identification tags that were placed on her.
For the, what do those contain? Her name or the number of the body that you're talking about?
They would definitely have her medical examiner's number. If she was identified, and I'm not sure if she was initially or not, it would have her name on that identification tag. If not, we would put down UBF for unidentified black female.
So, sir, at this time, Had you counted up the gunshot wounds that were on the outside of the body?
Yes.
During the course of the autopsy, did you learn how many times that she was in fact shot?
Yes.
How many times, sir?
She was shot 24 times, or she has 24 gunshot wounds.
And page 1 of State's Exhibit 50, sir. Again, you've identified this on the Mondo pad as being the State's Exhibit that you have. Is that correct?
It is.
And you did an anatomic diagnosis to begin with. Is that correct, sir?
Correct.
And is that the exterior examination of the body?
No, the anatomic diagnosis is the summary of my findings in one-page format.
On the front of the autopsy report?
Yes. So the first page is report of autopsy, which has her vital statistics as well as a summary of the autopsy findings. It's the next 14 pages where I specifically describe each wound specifically.
Okay. So on the bottom of that page, we have the cause of death. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that is?
Multiple, open parentheses, 24, close parentheses, gunshot wounds of head, comma, neck, comma, trunk, comma, and left arm with multiple visceral, comma, vascular, comma, and skeletal injuries, period.
And page 2 then, doctor? What is the gross anatomic description, sir?
The gross anatomic description is going to be my summary or how I describe the body. The first paragraph had the scene, and then the remainder of the descriptions as I was in the autopsy room.
Okay. Her reported age was 30 years of age, is that correct?
Yes.
And then, sir, the external and internal evidence of recent injury area on page 2. Are these the specific findings that you made as to each wound?
Yes. And I decided to outline her autopsy report by putting 3 categories of wounds. She has penetrating wounds, which bullets enter but do not exit. She has perforating wounds, which the bullet enters and exits. And then she has miscellaneous wounds, which include blunt and sharp force injuries.
Okay. So your report explains that as well. The first penetrating wounds are listed as Roman numeral 1, is that correct?
Correct.
That's on page 1 of 14.
Yes.
And there are 16 of those penetrating wounds.
Yes.
And that is, again, going in but not leaving the body. Is that correct?
Correct.
What when you do these, wound number 1, it says to the gunshot wound to the head. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. In what order do you document the wounds then, sir?
I document them from the top of the body, moving down the body, again in that same fashion, the head, neck, and then the torso, and then going down the arms and legs.
So wound number 1 doesn't mean that it occurred first, is that correct?
Correct. It's just the topmost, or the one furthest away from her feet.
Okay. Showing you State's Exhibit 846, sir. The packet that you reviewed. Pictures that are the packet that you reviewed, they're kept in the ordinary course of business, aren't they, with the medical examiner's office?
Yes, they are.
And this photograph was taken by someone at your direction, is that right?
Correct.
Right. Tell us what it is that we're looking at here on wound number 1.
State's exhibit that is listed, looks like 846, is gunshot wound number 1 that I describe being on the left side of the head. There's an irregular tear at the top portion of her left ear, and then the bullet penetrates very shallow into the underlying scalp, skull, and brain.
Okay. Can we see the bullet on State's Exhibit 846 in that photograph?
Yes, you can. Just above the edge of the ear and below the 0 is going to be a shiny grayish metal object. That is the bullet underneath the surface of the skin.
Thank you. And you said superficial, so did it penetrate the brain or cause any fatal injuries, sir?
It did penetrate 3/4 deep into the brain, so that would be within 1.5 inches from the surface of the skin.
Okay. Was this an immediate death shot or kill shot, sir?
She was essentially not alive when this bullet hit her because there's no hemorrhage around it. So had she been alive, this would have caused death.
This is a non-hemorrhagic wound, sir?
Yes.
What is post-mortem and what is ante-mortem, sir?
Post-mortem are processes that happen after death. Pre-mortem or ante-mortem are processes that happen before death.
And again, sir, this is the left ear on the left side of her body?
Correct.
I'm pointing to the right, to the correct ear, is that correct?
You are, yes.
And ante-mortem then is pre-mortem? Can we use those words interchangeably?
Yes, they're essentially the same.
Okay. All right. So gunshot wound number 2. You have this on your list as well.
I do.
And again, we're still under the penetrating classification. Is that correct?
Yes.
So gunshot wound 2 is a penetrating wound. Is that right?
Yes.
All right. What can you tell us about this one?
Penetrating gunshot wound number 2 enters the left eye area, and it's non-hemorrhagic. It shatters, the bullet shatters, and it goes into the underlying facial skeleton and some of the soft tissues around that area.
Okay. Is this post-mortem or pre-mortem?
It's post-mortem.
So this as well is after she has already died?
Yes.
And again, on what side of the body is this?
This is her left eye.
Again, this side, is that correct?
Correct, you're pointing over your left eye.
Would this have been a lethal shot had she been alive?
No.
She could have survived this wound,
Yes.
but lost her eye.
Absolutely lost her eye, but no vital structures were damaged. She certainly may have died of complications from infection and things like that, but this is not a bullet wound that would cause death.
Okay. And is there a term of a lethal wound? Have you heard that before? Do you use that, sir?
Yes.
Okay. So it's not a lethal wound?
It's not.
And what about fatal wounds? Do you use those terms?
Yes, interchangeably with lethal.
So lethal and fatal are the same thing in terminology. Coroner or medical examiner or pathologist, is that correct?
True. Yes.
Was a pellet recovered on this, sir?
Yes, fragmented pellet in and around the mouth, the jaw area, as well as some of the soft tissues around the spine.
And what was the path of this, sir?
This path went into the eye and fragmented the bone of the upper jaw, and it was traveling from her left to her right, obviously from the front to the back and downward. When I say downward, that is in the normal anatomic position from the top of the head towards her feet.
Okay. And was that projectile recovered then?
It is.
And kept with other pieces of evidence that you found?
Yes.
And then what do you do with those?
I examined the bullets and bullet fragments, and then I submit them to our property closet in a sealed envelope.
Your next wound that you record, doctor, on your autopsy report, what is that?
Gunshot wound Number 3 is described as a gunshot wound of the neck. And this is a penetrating wound. It's on the left side of the neck, and it is grazes or nicks the lower portion of the left earlobe. And it's in the center portion of the photograph that's up on the Mondo screen. Also in the photograph is the gunshot wound number 1.
For the record, we're looking at State's Exhibit 848, is that correct?
Yes.
So we just saw the tip of the ear, correct?
Yes.
And this one is where?
This one is just below the left ear.
All right, am I pointing to the right ear?
You are.
What else can you tell us about this wound?
This too is a penetrating gunshot wound. It travels from her left to right, front to back, and downward, and does not strike any vital structures. So it's a non-lethal wound, or non-fatal wound.
Again, on this left side of the body that I'm pointing to?
Yes.
The correct ear?
Correct, just below the ear.
You said that was or was not hemorrhagic?
I do not specifically say if it's hemorrhagic or not.
That's what I was wondering.
It's a part of the area that's difficult to ascertain hemorrhage or not, and it's a non-lethal wound.
But might have paralyzed?
No, it did not paralyze.
Oh, I thought I read that it hit the spine.
Let me double check, please. It hits the bones that are on the side portion of the spine, so it does not actually hit the spinal cord, which would cause paralysis.
Pardon my interruption, Mr. Bell.
Thank you. All right. So not easy to ascertain, or as you said, difficult to ascertain.
Correct.
Can't say if this is hemorrhagic. Can't say specifically if this one is antemortem or post.
Correct.
The next wound, sir, Malissa Williams, gunshot wound of the neck. That's to your report.
Is on the right side of her neck. This is gunshot wound number 4, and it is again a penetrating gunshot wound in that I recovered a bullet, and I recovered that bullet near the spine, but it does not cause paralysis. This bullet enters into the body from her right side, traveling towards the left, front to back, and downward as well.
Is this a lethal or non-lethal?
It's a non-lethal wound.
And how about gunshot wound number 5?
Gunshot wound number 5 is on her left neck. And this bullet enters on the left side of the neck, and it travels into the thorax or the chest region. I did recover a bullet, so it's a penetrating wound, and this travels from her left to right, front to back, and also downward.
And is this wound here, State's Exhibit number 850?
Yes,
Okay. Am I pointing to the right area?
you are.
It's on the neck, as your report says, correct, sir?
Correct.
You said this one was non-lethal as well, correct?
Correct, non-lethal
Gunshot wound number 5.
is what I just described.
Pre or post-mortem?
Similar to the other one on the neck, it's difficult to ascertain hemorrhage or not. It did not strike any vital structures. So hemorrhage or no hemorrhage is, again, difficult.
Okay. And then gunshot wound number 6, please.
Gunshot wound number 6 is on her left upper back region. This too is a penetrating wound in that I recover a bullet further down on the right back area. And this does not strike any vital structures. It goes from left to right, back to front, and downward.
Okay. Is this a lethal wound?
No, it's not.
And this would be State's Exhibit 851 is the photograph to go along with that. Which one of these wounds are we talking about?
It's the wound that is at the edge of the ruler and just north or to the right of that, yes.
Pointing to the red area?
Correct. So there's a dark red-brown area, quite obvious. That's the entrance wound.
All right. Able to ascertain whether this was hemorrhagic or not?
No, again, it's in muscles that do not help for hemorrhage and non-hemorrhage.
And gunshot wound of the left thorax, wound number 7. Can you tell us about this?
Gunshot wound number 7 is in the left upper chest area. It's near the armpit. And this is a penetrating wound that travels left to right, front to back, and downward. This bullet breaks the left 6th rib on the side of the body, and then is present within the left chest cavity.
Okay. Showing you State's Exhibit 852 then, is that what we're looking at? Which one of those?
Yes. It's the gunshot wound number 7 is going to be the yellowish oval wound. Looking at the photograph from the top margin, there's a dark area.
Yeah.
That's an abrasion. And then that Mr. Bell is pointing to an abrasion. The circular or oval wound is gunshot wound number 7, the oval.
Again, these are all penetrating wounds?
Yes.
Is this a lethal or non-lethal wound, sir?
It's not a lethal wound. It causes damage, but it breaks a rib. Eventually, it would lead to death, but there are more serious wounds in Miss Williams' body.
There are a number of other wounds displayed on State's Exhibit 852. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is the arm placed in a strange way, or is it deformed? What's happened with that?
The arm, upper arm, is broken by the bullets that entered, most of which exited that area of the arm. So there is extensive fracturing of the upper arm bone on the left. Also visible in the photograph is at least 2 perforating gunshot wounds, meaning bullets entered and exited, as well as gunshot wound number 16, which is a penetrating gunshot wound.
What's this picture of these wounds indicative of?
They are indicative that she broke her arm, and because of the bullets going through the bones underneath it, one bone.
Before we go to the next set of wounds, Doctor, the wounds at this point have all been non-lethal, is that correct?
Yes.
And they have been penetrated, is that correct?
Yes.
Before you said you can use lethal and fatal as interchangeably, is that correct?
Yes.
So a lethal shot, can that be a shot that is after death?
No, you're already dead with a lethal shot.
The lethal shot kills.
Correct. I would use that as a post-mortem lethal wound, but the ones that I've been stating as far as lethal and not, she's alive when she sustains those.
Understood. Okay. All right. It's acceptable practice and pathology of your coroner or medical examiner then to determine the status of a person's life by looking at whether or not the wound was hemorrhagic. Is that correct?
We use hemorrhage to help determine if there is ante-mortem injury versus post-mortem injury. Not all ante-mortem injuries, depending on the organs and structures they go to, will be hemorrhagic. The experience is what helps me determine that.
Understood. So directing your attention, you and Kurt Jones of your department insert dowel rods into the mannequins in the places where there are lethal entries, sir?
Yes.
Did you do that for both Malissa Williams and Timothy Russell?
Yes.
After reviewing those autopsy reports, sir?
Yes.
And having been present during the course of the autopsy and conferring with Dr. Williams?
Yes.
And did you take those mannequins then to the scene of Heritage Middle School?
I did.
And did you place them inside of the Malibu, sir?
Yes.
Were pictures taken from the medical examiner's office, sir, at your direction?
Yes.
And that reconstruction was done for demonstration purposes?
Yes.
Were there members of BCI there at the time, sir?
Yes.
Did the rods show the trajectories of the downward shots into the bodies of the lethal wounds?
Yes, they do. They're accurate in Melissa's mannequin.
You performed the autopsy specifically on Melissa's and have reported her bullet paths, is that correct?
Yes.
Showing you State's Exhibit 28, sir. You identify this before?
Yes, State's Exhibit 28 is the mannequin for Melissa, or representing Malissa Williams, the lethal ante-mortem gunshot wounds on her body. The trajectories are each of the yellow rods, and where they penetrate into the mannequin is the corresponding gunshot wound number.
Okay. So there are numbers on the mannequin itself, correct?
Yes,
And those correspond to your report?
they do.
And so each of these rods are depicting lethal shots, is that correct?
Yes,
Shots that caused death?
that would have caused death, yes.
And these shots here, you can tell us more about them as we go through them, correct?
Absolutely.
Performed autopsies before where there's been multiple gunshot wounds, correct, sir?
Yes, unfortunately.
Testified before about different wounds contributing to someone's death, is that correct, sir?
Yes,
So you can have more than one wound that kills you, is that correct, sir?
yes,
And sometimes during the course of your testimony, you've been able to explain to courts and juries how those wounds interact and how the cause of death can occur with a contribution of wounds, correct, sir?
yes.
All right, gunshot wound of the right thorax, sir, number 8. Your report, is that where we left off?
Yes.
Can you explain this to us, sir?
Gunshot wound number 8 enters the right chest, and it goes into the body, so it's a penetrating wound, left to right and front to back. There was no deviation either upwards or downwards. So when I was examining her, it's essentially going straight down into the direction of the table. This bullet enters and goes through the right lung and causes some internal bleeding.
Is this wound depicted in State's Exhibit 853, sir?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and where would that be?
It is the wound that is closest to her chin. It's underneath the collarbone, and it is going to be what Mr. Bell is circling.
Okay. I'll circle that. All right, so we're talking about, I'm sorry, Erica, bring me back there. All right, thank you. So the one that I was pointing to, is that correct?
Yes, from this vantage point, it appears to be an oval wound underneath the collarbone
Okay.
on the right-hand side.
Is that a lethal wound, sir?
Yes.
Ante-mortem, that is pre-death, sir?
Yes.
Okay. And you explained how the numbers correspond. Am I pointing to the right number? 8?
You are on the mannequin.
So this is the injury, correct?
That is the trajectory for wound number 8, how the bullet entered the body.
In your autopsy report, sir, have you listed that the trajectory path?
I did.
Okay, what is that, sir?
The path of the bullet enters the skin and soft tissues underneath the right chest. It goes through the upper portion of the right lung and then goes into the soft tissues on the upper back on the right-hand side. And again, it goes from her left side of her body to her right and front to back with no significant upward or downward deviation.
Okay. You're saying from the left side of the body to the right, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So the wound path is angling from left to right, correct?
Yes,
And the rod shows that? Is that correct?
it does.
Showing you State's Exhibit 834, sir. Was the pellet recovered?
It was.
And would have been one of the pellets discussed or shown in State's Exhibit 834?
It would be none of those bullets. It's going to be a little higher up.
Higher than that?
Yes.
How about now?
We're seeing the edge of it on the far left.
Okay. This is the bullet here then, on the left-hand side,
Correct.
that you recovered?
Yes. There's another X-ray that has it. This shows it quite striking, I believe.
Okay.
That triangular bone is the scapula, and there's an oval bullet that's on the the rightmost margin.
So State's Exhibit 831 for the record, and it's the one on the scalpel as you explained over to the left of the picture.
Correct.
You were able to track that wound path, that bullet path, is that correct?
Yes.
Again, left to right, and that is a lethal wound.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Hemorrhagic?
Yes.
So ante-mortem or pre-mortem?
Ante-mortem.
Prior to death, correct?
Correct.
She was alive at the time this was sustained.
Yes.
Gunshot wound of the right thorax, number 10, sir?
I'm going to go in order, or
Yes. Sorry.
that was it.
That was my, I'm skipping that. So, prior to that, staying on 8 for a moment, sir. State's Exhibit 56. And for the record, State's Exhibit 28 that's in front of us as depicted in State's Exhibit 856.
Yes, it is.
Okay. And is that trajectory rod there as well as depicted there? Is that number 8 that we're looking at?
Yes.
And 857?
Yes, it's present in this 857 as well.
Okay. And did you place Malissa Williams' mannequin, State's Exhibit 28, back into the Malibu on a subsequent date after the death?
Yes, I did.
Gunshot wound of thorax, then, number 9, going in order.
Gunshot wound number 9 is, again, a penetrating gunshot wound, meaning it entered the body, but did not exit, so I recovered a bullet from this wound. This wound enters the left chest region, and it goes through the underlying sternum, which is the breastbone, through the upper lung on the left-hand side, goes also through the ascending aorta, which is the largest artery in the body, and through the rib in the back. And I recovered a bullet near that rib fracture. This bullet enters and goes through the body, left to right, front to back, and downward.
Okay. That's left to right, front to back. You always mean the front of the body, is that
Correct.
And downward?
Downwards towards the feet as I'm doing the autopsy.
Okay. And where would the pellet have landed on my body? Is that what you're looking at? As you're looking at it?
It is in the right lower area of the chest,
Okay. Right, my right side, lower area of the chest.
near the back or on the back.
All right. So show in the back.
Correct.
Okay. So showing you State's Exhibit 28, it's number 9, is that correct?
Yes.
And going back, and it would have landed back towards the back of the front to back, as you said, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so that's a lethal wound, correct?
Number 9 is lethal, yes.
So she was alive at that time?
Yes.
Ante-mortem is the correct medical term. Left to right downward. Showing you State's Exhibit then 832. Can we see it depicted in 832?
Yes. There are 3 bullets in State's Exhibit 832 down towards the bottom of the photograph. And there are 3 bullets. One of those would be the one that I recovered.
Thank you. Were there any injuries to the right arm?
No. And not right now either.
Or hyperextended knees.
All right, thanks.
Those were performed by me. So we call those iatrogenic injuries, doctor inflicted.
Okay, so gunshot wound that we're talking about, number 9. You placed the mannequin that we're discussing inside of the car, Exhibit 857. And where will we be pointing?
It's going to be through, up towards the top portion. Difficult to say exactly which one because this image is going through multiple yellow rods.
Okay. So where the number 9 is, though?
Yes, that's the trajectory.
Rod?
Yes.
So if we can follow that and follow backwards, am I pointing to the right one then?
You are, yes.
Okay. So again, in the left to right position, correct?
Correct.
Gunshot wound number 10, sir, in your report. It's a gunshot wound of a right thorax. What's the thorax?
The thorax is the chest area. Any place that there's the ribs and sternum is the thorax region.
Generally, in the bodies that you saw inside of the car, the Malibu, that area, was it, how were the bodies located when you saw them in the Malibu?
Melissa Williams was sitting in the passenger side seat, and Mr. Russell was in the driver's side seat.
And where were their buttocks?
My recollection was that Mr. Russell's buttocks were flat on the driver's seat and he was slumped towards the right, whereas Melissa may had her right cheek, if you will, on the seat, and she was more rotated towards, like she's looking out the passenger seat area. So her left butt, and I don't know specifically, but was not as planted down as his was.
Were their bodies low in the seats?
They were slumped in the seats, yes.
And sir, moving on then to this gunshot wound of the right thorax here.
Gunshot wound number 10 is described as gunshot wound of the right thorax.
Okay, it's lethal or non-lethal?
This is a lethal wound.
How long would it take for someone to die with this injury, sir?
This by itself would lead to a fairly quick death within several minutes because the bullet goes through major veins near the heart. So this is a lethal wound within a couple of minutes by itself.
Okay. Lethal wound, it's ante-mortem?
Yes.
Hemorrhagic?
It goes through, yes it does, it is hemorrhagic.
Okay. And again, this is also left to right?
Correct. Front to back and downwards.
Front to back and downwards.
Yes.
Pointing to the correct one on the mannequin?
You are.
Okay. Where does the projectile end up?
This one is recovered from the right back underneath the surface of the skin. And similar to where number 9 was, it's one of those that's in that area. There's 3 that are clustered because of their location on the X-ray. I can't tell which one is which.
So just to make sure that I'm positioning this right, this that we're looking up in the upper right-hand corner of State's Exhibit 832, that is the left arm? Is that
Yes.
correct?
There's also a large L that helps to determine left and right. That's what the L's for.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so the X-rays, if you will, the body is facing towards the viewer. Is that right?
Correct.
So this is one of these down at the bottom left shows wound number 10 where the bullet ended up. Is that correct?
Yes,
So this is again, it's a downward shot.
it is.
Okay. And where would the entrance have been on State's Exhibit 832? In direct.
This would be
How
higher.
about the stand for a moment?
Absolutely.
Just for a second here. So I'm not moving the pen. Can you show it to the camera, please?
The entrance is going to be closer on the right-hand side of the spine. The collarbone is for orientation. It's going to be about 2-finger, 3-finger breaths below on the collarbone on the right-hand side on this section.
And then moving downward.
Downward to one of these 3 points.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.
Please take this.
You said one of those 3. Is that because, just glancing at this X-ray, you don't know which, or you never knew which? Because they're so close together.
No, I knew which ones when I took the bullets out.
Okay.
If I can explain, the X-rays in 2 dimensions.
Understood.
So I don't know the depth of each of these x-rays, but I did locate each bullet with its corresponding entrance wound.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yes.
So when you looked at the wound paths, you were able to follow the wound paths down?
Yes.
From the entranceway to the final resting spot where the projectile was?
On all of them, yes.
So this is a left to right shot, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Is that left side of the body?
Yes.
Are we looking at where you pointed here on this side of the screen?
It would be closer to the spine area.
Closer to the spine?
Yes.
Was it over on the left of the spine or the right of the spine?
No, it's still on the right-hand side.
Okay, so it's going leftward, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and that
Yes.
left to right, leftward to right.
Left. Yes. It enters 3/4 inches from the midline of the chest, and I recovered the bullet 2 inches right, so it traveled 1.25 inches towards the right.
Yes, sir. Which wound are we talking about, looking at the state's Exhibit 853?
It is going to be the 3rd one down from the chin area. It's the largest hole that you are pointing to. So it's just 3/4 inches right of the chest, midline. That is entrance wound number 10.
Yeah, this is number 10.
Yes.
This hits the heart.
It does not specifically hit the heart, but it hits the major vein that drains blood from the head and arm area into the heart.
And what's significant about that, sir? Where would the blood go?
That blood is going to collect. It's going to be internal bleeding versus blood oozing out of the body. So that's going to be in the right chest cavity around the area of the right lung.
Can that blood be collected?
Yes.
Was it collected in this instance?
Yes.
Was it measured?
Yes.
What was the volume of the blood?
There was 400 milliliters of liquid blood around the right, or within the right chest cavity.
Let me interrupt you if you don't mind, Mr. Bell. It sounds like you have maybe a couple more on wound 10, then you move on to 11. Why don't we break at this point? So, sir, you do remain under oath and obligated to return to the stand.
I will.
At let's say 25 after 1. You're welcome to step down now, and thank you. We'll see you at almost 1:30.